So how do we solve this problem here? Well, first thing, as usual, is to do the table of cash flows. So we're going to have 1231x5. We're going to call that date 0. And then we've got 1231x6. That's date 1. 1231x7 is date 2. Date 3 is 1231x8. And then we've got 1231x9. This is while we're building the plant, and this is when we're in production. So that's what the final 2 years we're doing. Now, what are the cash flows? Well, the first one is when we build the plant. What's that going to be? Negative 2.5. We recorded at date 0, December 31st of the current year. What do we get at the end from the investment? The salvage. Where is that? Which date? 4. And how much do I record there at date 4? Well, if you remember, it was 800,000, so it's plus 0.8 million. Is there a tax effect? No, the assumption that we make as the standard one is you sell it for the book value, so there's no tax effect. We take account of the deductibility of the investment, not by expensing it, but by doing what? We have the depreciation, and then we have a depreciation tax shield. When do we get those? Where, if you remember, it's when you're producing, we start 11x8, which is effectively the same as date 2. And the first year that we're going to get it, therefore, is in that year, which means we're going to be able to take it at 12/31x8, or date 3. How much is that depreciation tax shield? Well, it's our usual TC times depreciation, so it's going to be 0.35 times what? We start with the 2.5, we subtract the 800,000, and we divide by 2. And we get that for both years. You work it out, it's 297,500. The land rental, we don't actually have to pay it, but if we didn't do it, we could rent it out. So what is it? It's an opportunity cost. We're told it occurs at the end of the year, so you pay the rent in arrears, not in advance. So what's the first date that we get it at? Date 1. It's going to be the 200,000 rent. We multiply it by TC, or 1 minus TC. 1 minus TC, because it's an actual cash flow if it was to occur. So we've got minus 0.65 times 200,000, which is minus 130,000. That's for all 4 years. And then we've got the revenues and the costs. Now, we could do the tax effects on each line by multiplying by 1 minus TC, but since we've got several lines, including raw materials and labor costs as well as revenues, it's probably simple to just do it once at the end. So let's look first at the revenues. So we're going to occur first at 1231x8 after the first year of production. And what we're going to do is to take the $7 that we can sell the pies for each, we multiply by the 1.2 million, and that gives us 8.4 million. And that's for both years. We have some raw material costs. Those are $1.20. There are 1.2 million pies, so we get 1.44 million. And then the labor costs are 420,000, so that's 0.42 million in both years. And then we want to calculate the before tax operating profit. That's going to come from 5 minus 6, the raw material, minus 7, which is the labor. If you work that out, it's 6.54 million. We get that for both years. Now we have to find the taxes and subtract them. So the after-tax operating profit is going to be multiplied by TC or 1 minus TC? 1 minus TC, so it's going to be 0.65 times 8. So 0.65 times 6.54 million gives 4.251 million. We get that both years. Now we have our working capital, the total working capital. Remember the number they said that you would need at 1231x7 for the first year? It was how much? That was the 300,000. It rose by 10%. So at date 3, you need how much? 330,000, yeah. And then at date 4, how much do you need? When the project's over, what are you going to do with the inventories? Sell them off. So our total working capital needs is 0. So the working capital cash flow is how much? At date 2, we need, yeah, we have negative 300,000. At date 3, we have negative 30. And then what do we have at date 4? Plus 330,000. So our total cash flows we can either calculate row by row or column by column. Given we have so many rows, it's probably quicker to do it by columns here. So let's do it that way. So at date 0, we just have the minus 2.5 million. At date 1, we've got the minus 130,000, which is the opportunity cost for the land that we're using. At date 2, we've got the working capital contribution and the land, so we have minus 430. And then at date 3, we've got the 297,500 tax shield. We've got minus the 130,000 land rental. And we have the 4.251 million after tax operating profit. minus the 30,000 working capital, and if you work that out, you should get 4.3885 million. At date 4, we get the 800,000 salvage value, the 207,500 depreciation tax shield, the minus 130 land rental, and then we get the 4.251 million after tax operating profit, and we get the return of the working capital of 330,000. If you work that all out, you should get 5.5485 million. So those are our cash flows. Are there any questions about any of that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you explain intuitively why the working capital should go in year 2 and not year 3?
Remember, you need it for inventory, so it's the start of the year. So we're going to start producing at 11x8, which is date 2 effectively. So we need in place piles of inventories just before we start producing. That's date 2, not date 3. So you have to get the timing. It's the usual assumption. You have to be careful about the timing. Any other questions? So now we do our usual NPV calculation.
In this case, it would be easier just to do the calculator.
Yes.
Probably cash flow number.
Right. Yeah, we use a calculator. In general, when you're doing these problems at homework, do them with calculators because you won't have Excel in the exam. So get used to doing it with a calculator. Okay, so we have a discount rate of 12% here. So the net present value is going to be minus the 2.5 million from date 0, minus the 0.13 million at date 1, divided by 1.12, and then we've got the minus 0.43 million at date 2. We divide that by 1.12 squared, and then we've got the 4.3885 million divided by 1.12 cubed. And then finally we've got 5.5485 million divided by 1.124. If you work that out, we get 3.69 million. What should we do? Build it. This is a profitable, value-creating project. Yes?
This is the general question on a comment you made a minute ago. Are we to assume that all the homework problems we do are solvable with a regular calculator? So we should never have to use Excel to do the homework?
You should never have to use Excel. If you don't have a calculator, it's much easier sometimes. But if you don't have a calculator that can solve it, that means you've got the calculator that's going to put you at a disadvantage in the exam. Now, having said that, for the case, you have to use Excel, so. Okay. No more questions. Have a good week, and I'll see you on Thursday.